Hello and welcome to everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hen Life, and the topic being rethinking the future of education, especially talking about STEM education and AI. But before we do that, I would quickly want to um, say hello to our Hen members also. For those of you who do not know, HEN is a community of women entrepreneurs who are focused on inspiring, informing, and supporting each other to build successful businesses along with balanced life. And now it's my absolute pleasure to invite Dr. Sonali Dasgupta.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Sonali. Hello. Let me quickly introduce you to the audience over here. So, Dr. Sonali is a research scientist turned educator and an IIT Delhi alumni. She's a mentor to talented high schoolers and the founder of STEMonsters education platform. Before we continue, Sonali, would you want to quickly introduce what is STEMonsters all about?
Before I even introduce STEMonsters, I would like to wholeheartedly thank you, Neetu, for that very fantastic introduction, which sounds more fancy than probably it is. But yeah, thank you very much. The pleasure is all mine. Looking forward to this conversation on an very, very important topic of today, and that's very close to my heart. Um,
Amazing.
so, yeah, so STEM Masters Education is a hands on STEM learning platform. We work with schools and parents to implement a hands on program which has a focus on design thinking and first principles approach to learning.
Okay, very interesting. Design thinking and first principles approach to learning. Would you be able to help us understand that in a more simpler term for lay people like me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, design thinking is a term you might have heard at many places. What it essentially encapsulates is solving a problem with a user centric approach and with empathy. The core belief of design thinking is to have empathy in the solution that you solve for. So in today's world where everything is related to digital solutions and AI and we people losing connections, when we are trying to solve a problem, whether it is a tech solution or whether it is a non-tech solution, the idea is to put yourself in the shoes of the user or the person who needs that solution and then solve it with empathy to be able to
Interesting.
come up with a solution that is sustainable and that can be used by the people who it is designed for.
Amazing, amazing. So, and you I think you've done something really crazy, which is what I'm hearing about design thinking being more right brain, and then you using it with STEM, which is more left brain. How are you culminating? How are you bringing both of these together?
So to start off, I think the right brain, left brain thought process has actually been proven to not exist anymore. There has been enough research to show that there is no right brain and left brain, although it's easier to think along those lines. The
Hmm.
second part is when we talk of design thinking, it's not the design or the arts that I'm talking about. It is how we think about a problem statement. So design thinking actually has 5 steps to it, which is
Hmm.
empathize, then ideate, then identify the problem that you're trying to solve to come with a focused idea, and then of course iterate and test it again and reiterate the process. So when we talk
Right.
of design thinking, the core really is empathy, and then pulling
Got it.
in all the knowledge that you have to to come up with a solution that works for the users.
Amazing, amazing. And I've got our audience even telling that even they were surprised that there is no right and left brain. I think for people, laymen like us, it was very easy to look at you to think through that. But great learning right at the very beginning of today's session.
Yeah, well, Harvard
And
has some studies on that, so people can look up, or I'll share a link after this conversation,
amazing,
which kind of refutes that thought process.
great. Always, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, and there's always something new to learn every time I talk to you.
You're very kind.
Okay. Okay. So now let's talk about the STEM, the space that we are at in STEM. And
Mhm.
STEM it's not a new concept. It's been around for quite some time, right? And for our audience out there, especially parents and teachers who are looking at STEM as a integral part of the children's education system, uh, how how are you differentiating yourself as a STEM? What do I call you? A STEM platform,
STEM education platform,
STEM
yes.
education platform. So how are you differentiating yourself here?
So, first of all, I don't think we need to differentiate ourselves. That's very important
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
each and every person who is trying to give education to the students out there is
Mm-hmm.
solving a certain problem. What I
Okay.
would like to call it is what we focus on rather than saying that's our differentiator. That's a very business savvy term, right? And we are talking to parents here, so we don't want to differentiate ourselves. But I would
Mm-hmm.
definitely like to reiterate what we focus on. So, in
Okay.
our program, the focus is primarily on helping the children build a mindset on how to approach a problem statement scientifically and with empathy. So, most
Okay.
of our, when we say our program is focused on design thinking and first principles learning, what we are assuming is the child grows up not just to know the subjects as they are, but they grow up to be able to solve a problem that is probably even unknown to them. So
Okay.
it is about developing an aptitude to learn new things, which is the need of the hour, along
Mm-hmm.
with the fact that they have a competency in the core skills that are needed to move on from that point onwards. So our program is not about hand holding the child with a kit. It is more about a hands on way of building something to solve a problem.
Okay. Would you be able to give us an example to understand this a little bit more?
Sure. So, one of the things I keep getting asked by parents when they ask how the program works is, will you send kits? And
Mm.
answer to that question usually is, and which is the truth, of course, not just the answer, is we don't send templatized kits, because what happens is when you send a templatized kit, it is good maybe for very young children to get excited about the topic. But ultimately, when you give a pre cut template, it becomes a hand holding where every single child comes up with the same expectation or with the same outcome. If there is a
Okay.
kit which turns on a if they make a torch with a sun solar panel maybe, so it will work for everybody. But what has the child learned in the end? He has learned how to assemble the kit, and he has learned
Mm.
if I turn on the switch the torch will light up. He hasn't learned what can go wrong. He hasn't learned what if it this did not work. He hasn't learned what are the other ways I could make this torch light up if not with a solar panel. So our program is designed in such a way, the curriculum is designed in such a way that the child starts asking these questions and understands the problem, which is turning on the torch, in an interdisciplinary fashion. Could it be bioluminescence? Could it be wind energy? Could it be some other form of energy that can do this?
Interesting.
Is this particular, they build their own form, physical form of the torch. Now, torch doesn't have to be cylindrical. Who says it can't be rectangular? Who says it can't be a
Mm.
funny shape? Right? So we focus on building the competency in the subject, and we do that by not giving a kit and letting the creativity and curiosity of the child to guide them to where they need to be.
Wow, that's amazing. I really loved what you said about that. We're not teaching the kid to do things just in one way. So in certain in for me that in certain ways it also means you're not limiting them and with that, right? And you're letting them think beyond the obvious. I really love that. I also love what you said about the fact that when we do things in the other way, we're not teaching them what happens if things don't happen the way we anticipated that. And that, I think, is real life,
Yes.
right?
And that's where learning starts, right? So we tell
Very
the
nice.
students that if you come in with a if you come into the class with one question, and if we
Mm.
have not been able to send you back with 10 more questions, we have failed in our session. We have failed in our
Amazing.
teaching. You need to go back
Amazing.
with more questions than you come in with. Because learning
Mm.
starts when we start asking, right? And that
Amazing.
is
It
some,
is so
unfortunately, that is
revolutionary.
what is that is what is being throttled in many places today. We are not asking.
Absolutely. I think it's very revolutionary the way you're saying that, right? Um, that we asking questions is, and going back with asking more, having more questions, then that's amazing because somewhere I was reading about how our education system is actually is not teaching the engineers to do that, and that's one of the reasons we are struggling as a nation in some ways. I think somewhere, and you're changing this. So I'm hoping with this wide acceptance of STEM and the way you're doing these things in a manner that our next generation and the coming generation will not have the same kind of label that we've had others sharing about us in the earliest times as such.
Yeah, well, that is the hope, right? I mean, right now we are facing an unemployability, or not even unemployability. Less than 10% graduates are employable right now. And it's a figure. It has risen
Mhm.
from, I think, 8% to somewhere around 10 to 12% last year, in a
Mhm.
report that I was reading. However, the point is we need to we cannot, as a most populous nation in the world, we cannot have only 88%, 85% engineers who are employable, or graduates who are employable. And when I started STEMonsters, one of the things I wanted to do was, I want India to, if we are the most populous nation, we have no dearth of talent. We are definitely missing something in the equation, because we can
Correct.
very easily be amongst the top three nations on the innovation index in the world. And whereas we have risen multiple steps this year in the innovation index, we are far away from being the most populous nation, and yet not being in the top three, top five nations. And
Right.
that's ultimately my long term vision, to see India in my lifetime being in the top three nations, in most innovative nations in the world. And that takes
Amazing.
time,
It is.
right? That,
Yes, yes.
yeah, I mean, that would be dream come true.
And I'm sure it's going to happen because we have people like you across the country who's changing
Yes.
things at a very
Yes.
root level,
Yes.
right? And
Absolutely.
that's really very important. That kind of also takes me back to the parents, and the parents who are sending their children to this new way of learning, the new technologies, new systems, and the design thinking of learning, etc., etc. With about them, there is also a common fear on the other side of it, right? Where we're talking about AI, and and parents are worried that all this AI is making my child lazy. Is not thinking, he or she is not thinking anymore. So, how do we ensure that technology like AI actually enhances critical thinking and not replacing critical thinking? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I can only share my thoughts. That's a fantastic question. I think the elephant in the room is AI, whether it's education, whether it's employability. And we do need to address it. And I don't claim to have the right answers. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do have an opinion based on all the children I've interacted with, teachers I've talked to. I think AI, the biggest issue that we have with AI integration into education at this point is we are looking at AI as a plug-in solution. Oh, you want to create lesson plans, let's use AI to create that. There's an entire thought process, and I think half an hour or even 1 hour is too little a time to actually talk about AI. But one of the things I do want to say is we cannot and will not be able to stop children or students from using AI to do tasks. As adults, we can do that. As children, they will do it, which means we have to rethink in how and what they are using AI for. So, number one is the AI that is out there, it is not meant for children. If you and I use AI, we have had 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience using our brain to find solutions. So the way we will use AI is going to be very, very different from what a 12-year-old will use it for. Their brain has not developed. So they will
Hmm.
end up using that. Their cognitive development will be taken over by AI, which has unfortunately happened for us. So we can't equate to saying, oh, I'm using AI, let the child use AI. right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
the
Okay.
first fundamental difference that needs to be understood. The second thing is we need to rethink how we are assessing our children. If I need to put in a factual information, the factual information was always out there. And we were always testing on whether the child's brain was able to hold that information. And now AI does that holding for them, which is the
Correct.
entire thing of rote learning. So, how do we assess the children? What are we trying to assess the children for? Are we trying to assess them on their thought process? Are we trying to assess them on their creativity? Are we trying to assess them on how they approach a problem? So I think it is a wake up call to the entire education system on what are we trying to assess our children on. And as parents,
Interesting.
you're very right. A lot of parents are worried my child does the homework using AI. I mean, to be honest, of course, your child will use AI to solve a question paper that asks him to write down, I don't know, the people who are inventing transformative thinking, right? It's data. It's data. And computers are very good with retaining data. They will also have this thought process that we're talking about. But the problem is, or the way we should be looking at it is how can we help the child use AI, which they will eventually do, in a way that will assist them in building their thought process rather than inhibiting it. So, one of the examples could possibly be if they have a homework where they have to write an essay, let's say, on, I don't know, a state of India, Karnataka, right? So, you have to write an essay on Karnataka or why you love staying in Karnataka. One of the things that the parents can do is why don't you draw your own mind map of the reasons why you like Karnataka? Then you collate it into keywords on how you want to tell your story. And then, yes, you want facts and figures. You go to ChatGPT or you go to, I don't know, Perplexity and find out those facts and figures. That's okay. But you do not uh, outsource your storytelling and your thought process of what is dear to you to AI. Because AI,
Got
at
it.
the end of the day, is putting things together that already exist in a much more efficient way, definitely. But what we also need to ensure is that there will, how do we come up with something new which has not existed at all? So I don't know how the employability demography will look like in next 10 years, right? We didn't know that AI would come here 5 years ago when we were
Correct.
fighting COVID. We
Absolutely.
didn't know AI would come, right? So we don't know what is going to happen in the next 10 years. And what we need to do at that point is just make sure that the child knows how to, what is the correct use of AI, what is it that they are using it for. So I always keep telling my children, my students, that use AI to do the things that you cannot do within a certain given amount of time. But don't use AI to replace you.
Hmm.
The
Got
moment
that.
the children understand that you're not, AI is not their replacement, they will definitely understand, give them the pride of being themselves. This is my thought, my process. So it takes a lot more than one conversation, I guess.
I get that.
But
I
this is a good
definitely.
place to start.
This is amazing. That's really amazing. For those of the people who are there in the audience, please do add your questions. If you have anything, please keep adding them so that if you have questions for Sonali, she's sharing such deep insights. Please do share your questions over here. Ruchi is asking, can you cite another example? Mm, let's, Ruchi, what example, which specific point, and maybe if you can help us understand that, and then what should AI do? Okay, can you
Okay.
cite an example? Can you share an example about what should AI do versus what an AI should not do, or maybe how we use AI for
And
the
how we
child and
should
where
not.
we do not use
Yeah.
AI for the child?
Yeah, so I think a part of the answer, part of that answer, I already mentioned that children should not be using AI to replace them. So if they have a homework, that they just come type it in into AI and it gives the answer, they copy paste it and they give it outside, then it's replaced them entirely. even if it is a factual problem statement, even if it's a factual question, and I think will take much longer than 15 minutes, half an hour to change the entire assessment system that lies with the education right now. But one of the things that they can do, as I said, is to, once they have gathered their thoughts, once they have their story they want to tell, and when I say story, it doesn't mean history, arts, and civics. When I say story, it could even be a problem to it could even be a solution to a problem, right? Once they know how they want to go to that, how they want to solve a particular problem, then they can use AI to help organize their thoughts.
Got
So
it.
there the AI is working more as a technical assistant or helping you become a bit more efficient rather than actually doing what you want to do, rather than being the source of the idea.
Amazing. I can see Gunjan being very happy, like, resonating with this and saying it's a great disruptive approach. And I guess that's what we kind of need, disrupting the way we are doing things right now. So definitely. Priyanka has a question, and I think I was also very nicely segues into my next question, since we're talking about parents and children. How do parents prepare their child for this new future with, design thinking, AI, ML, etc., etc.? So what skills can we help build for our children?
I keep going off. I don't know why my internet is steady. Anyway, so yeah, the toughest question for the last. Right. So we don't know what the future is going to be. I don't know. You don't know. Anybody who says that they know is not being true to themselves. We don't know what the
Mm,
future is going to be, right? All we know is that we want our children to be able to thrive in whatever future holds for them. And in order to do that, things are going to be dynamic. Tech is evolving faster than we are. And one of the things that we need to equip our children for the future that is yet unknown is having the ability to learn things themselves. And that doesn't come from surface level learning. So when they are a child, they need to really gain competency on core principles, because only then can they learn uh, whatever is thrown in front of them. So that's number one. It's also this whole mindset of wanting to learn. And that
mhm.
wanting to learn comes from a deep interest in what they like. So, to nurture that interest is one of the things that you can do as a parent, and let them explore, let them be curious. Don't judge it by tangible outcomes like marks. So, that's one of the very, very important things to equip our children with. The second is, I think, in an era where everything is digital and tech driven, human connections are going to be at a premium in the next decade, and people who can work with people, which is already a skill that is on the decline, unfortunately, especially even with our today's generation, where they confuse their virtual world with the real world. It is going to become even tougher with AI agents out there who are kind of talking to you as a real person. It's going to become very, very blurred. And I think to be able to give that emotional resilience to your child each and every day as a parent or as a teacher, where they are able to work with people, empathize with people, and work in a team, is going to be one of the crucial skills that your child will need. So, yes, of
Amazing.
course, we want them to learn core competencies, we want them to learn core subjects that they will need. But then at the same time, what good is it if they're not able to work in a group? So, I think empathy, working in a team, understanding emotions, human connections, along with a competency in the subject that they like, is going to be the core need of the hour.
Got that. Got that. Fantastic. I think Priyanka is asking us, what are the core principles? What are your
So, core principles, when I say core principles, so up until a certain age, when they're really young, let them explore every topic, subject, domain that they have. But once they start going into high school or even upper middle school, they will start aligning to something that they like. When they like that, I think at that point, you need to focus on their competency in that subject. It could be
Got
history, it could be arts. I see a lot of people doing MUN nowadays, right? The Model United Nations in high school. Many parents will know. But what is happening is they're saying we will save this, we will save that, because now ChatGPT is there, they have information at their fingertips. But the moment you start asking them beyond the surface level question, they fumble. So that is not the kind of learning we are looking at. That is not the kind of learning that will take them very far, because ultimately AI will do that for them.
Hmm.
However, what it cannot replace, what AI will still take time to replace, maybe it will happen in 5 decades, I don't know. But at least in the next decade or so, what will remain important is how you think on coming up with a solution, and how you think on coming up with a solution, and the system of thinking is going to be based on how much of a grasp you have on the topic that you want to focus on.
Interesting, interesting. We have our audience agreeing with your observation on MUN, and also resonating about working together to be a co-human differentiator. It's very interesting, Sonali, because initially when we were planning this session today, I had no idea that we're going to with the topic being about STEM and AI. We're going to be talking about human connections and empathy and emotional intelligence. So it's very interesting that how the entire conversation has turned. Um, I have a last question for you. Okay, you're in this very powerful space where you're working with children, you're working with parents, and also working with educators, right? So it seems like the entire ecosystem that you're working with right now. So if you were, you know, given a free hand to design the future classroom, okay, or the future learning experience for our children, okay, what would it, how would you go about it? What would it be?
Oh my God. This is a question very close to my heart. I think initially when we were talking as well, I told you, I mean, that is like it takes me, I can go on and on. But I think if I have to wrap it up in a minute, ideal future classroom for me would be just a blank canvas where you
Okay.
have these different local places where the child can just decide where they want to go to, spend a couple of months there, explore, understand, use their creativity to come up with something. Fail, doesn't matter, they are failing, test it out again until they get it. So it's this one happy big place which has no walls. It is um, mixed stage learning. The older ones are helping the younger ones, the younger ones are coming with these crazy creative ideas which as adults we tend to lose, the older ones picking up on that and helping them bring some form to it. Subjects are not subjects, but you pick up a problem statement, we say global warming, and then there is a cohort of people who are trying to figure out what can they do from their end to solve that problem. I think it's going to be one happy big place with
Amazing.
nature and children and making and building, and no exam saying you have to sit down on this time and the bell goes and they have this scribbling on the paper. That's not what uh, school looks like
Interesting.
for me. Yeah. For me, it's
Amazing.
just one blank
Amazing.
canvas, a colorful blank tapestry.
You know
I don't know how that
what I'm
works.
you
Because
know
I
what
use
I'm
colorful
hearing?
and blank.
What I'm
Yeah.
hearing is that you've removed all limitations. The limitations
Yeah.
of walls, of limitations of a linear
Periods.
curriculum, yeah,
Yeah.
limitations of we said mixed generation learning. So you removed all of these, right? And
Yeah.
very interesting, and including what Priyanka is talking about here, removing the homogeneity of culture, of food, clothing, uniform,
Yes.
all of that you've removed. Even classrooms you've removed, right? The limitations
Yeah,
of
it's
being
about
inside a
learning.
meeting.
See, the focus has to be learning. The focus
Amazing.
cannot be the four walls. The focus cannot be the periods and the bell ringing at the end of 40 minutes. The
Hmm.
focus has to be the child immersed in a way where they want to learn without us having to tell them to learn.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a sign of a curious mind, because then curiosity, there is no 45 minutes time period for a
Yeah, I
curiosity, for the
know, I
curious
know.
mind, right? Amazing,
Absolutely.
amazing. It was such a pleasure, Sonali, to hear your thoughts. I've got goosebumps just thinking about the future classroom, like the way you've defined. I wish that was something our teachers thought about it. So really, really loved your time, and I enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure I can see our audience also agreeing with this. They're agreeing with the idea of the classroom, loving the chat, loving the conversation. So again, thank you very much for giving us this time and sharing your thoughts around STEM education and AI and the future of education.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you for giving me the platform to share my excitement with the rest of the people out there. And yeah, looking forward to more conversations and hopefully
Absolutely.
making this a reality soon.
And one more shout out to the hen community for making this happen, for making this interesting, lovely conversations that are happening. For all the audience out there, do go to our the hen YouTube channel. You'll see many conversations like this with entrepreneurs and what they are building for ourselves and for the country and the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.